Flight Risk. I am incredibly late to seeing this movie, thus why this is going up on my second channel. And there's a few reasons for that. When this movie was coming out, I was kind of interested in it. Sounded like a fun concept. It was Mel Gibson directing it. Or at least I thought he was either directing or producing. It wasn't sure. But I'm like, okay, he's involved. Enough said. Despite Mel Gibson being a controversial figure and not really a great person, he is a really good director and good actor. So if he's in a project, directing or acting wise, I'm at least a little more interested, right? Doesn't mean I'll be good, but yeah. But I'm not a big Mark Wahlberg fan. I think he's kind of gone off the deep end, and whatever the fuck was going on with that movie, Fathers 2, I was like, no thank you. So he's kind of 50-50, but I'm like, okay, we'll see. And yeah, and then this movie came out, and there was a lot of movies I was watching, and essentially I was like, I'm going to pass on this one because I heard bad things about it. Not that I didn't want to see it, I was just planning to see it at a later date. And then it just kind of kept getting pushed back for the last 2 weeks because I've heard awful things about this movie, and I'm not going to say that they were not true, but they weren't as bad as they're making this movie out to be. It is bad, but yeah. And also, I think another thing that turned me off from this movie before we get in the actual movie, Donald Trump like coming out and like making Mel Gibson the ambassador of Hollywood, him and Stallone. Like, I love Stallone and that kind of this stuff, but I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? I was just like, okay, not. So, this is a whole thing. It's kind of a disaster. But here we are. So, I wasn't really sure what to think about this movie going into it, but like I said, it was bad. So, let's get into it. Um, when I say this movie isn't as bad as people made it out to be, I think some people made it out like this film was unwatchable in some reviews I saw or just heard in passing. But it's really not. Like, it's actually a pretty fun movie that is not good. This is the kind of movie that if you were to go get drunk with friends or go with a group of friends and you were just to rip at this movie, the script and dialogue here are so fucking bad that it's kind of like you could have fun with that. Mark Wahlberg is giving like one, like, not his worst performance because we have The Happening, right? But up there because this is just like really bad performance. And it seemed like, and then it's weird that he's bald in the movie. I'm not sure what that was about. Like, I don't know why they cast him. He felt very miscast in this, not just in this role, but in this whole movie. Like, it was very bizarre what they were going for here. And I just was very confused by in this movie. But, like, in terms of it being a good movie, it's not. I also believe if this movie is, people are just gonna turn your brain off and have an enjoyable time with this movie. It's kind of a fun movie, even if it isn't great. I get if you have fun with this movie, but overall, it's not great. I think the two biggest problems with me, like I said, is the script and the dialogue. Like, there's just so many, like, you could just tell they just the characters do so many illogical things just because the script and the plot demands it. Like, at one point they explain that they can't kill Mark Wahlberg because he has to fly the plane, but then they're like, do we really trust him to fly the plane? And I'm like, okay, so you're making a justification of why you should kill him and why you should not, but the reason why you should outweighs the reason why you shouldn't, so fucking kill him. And so, like, majority of this movie wouldn't happen if they killed Mark Wahlberg. They just need to find a better reason to do this. I don't know. It's very bizarre why they chose not to do that. Alright, I'm like, okay, there's a certain way they could have made this movie work, but it didn't really work out that way because just the way they wrote it. And then, like, when I say the dialogue's really bad, it's kind of like frustrating because most of this movie is on a plane with these three characters, and all of them have terrible dialogue. The one girl, I guess, is the least of it because she's more of a quiet character trying to keep to himself, gather intel. But the guy who's like held captive in the back, he just fucking talks for the sake of talking. And he like some I can tell like some of it was trying to be funny, but it wasn't funny. Like it was just really irritating, and you really just grow to hate that character. He's probably one of the most annoying characters in the movie, um, or maybe I've ever seen in a movie. Like him and that guy who screams all the time from Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom. Like I don't know. This movie's not perfect. It's flawed, but I have fun with this movie, in a sense. So I don't know. I've seen people really enjoy this movie. I think this is one if you I'm sure I haven't seen the Rotten Tomato score, but I'm imagining that the critic score is a lot lower than the audience score because it is kind of a dumb fun like, oh, I saw that on a Tuesday for $5 and with a couple of friends and have a couple laughs, kind of movie where it is bad, it is kind of socky, but I don't know. It's not one of the better examples that, like, if you've seen Liam Neeson's The Beekeeper, that's a kind of fun slocky movie that I think works. This is kind of a bad slocky movie that you want to get drunk with friends and watch. So, here it is, Flight Risk. I could tell. I wonder if Mel Gibson just made this for a paycheck. It kind of does feel that way. There's a couple neat things he kind of does with the direction, but not enough to really, you know, his direction actually does actually lift this up. Now I'm thinking about because you do really kind of feel the claustrophobia of this plane, things like that. But overall, it's just kind of a very flawed kind of mess of a movie that need a better structure, writer, and cast apparently. Because our two main people are actually pretty good, except Mark Wahlberg. He's a fucking disaster. But yeah.